Welcome back to the Exhausted Documentary Series. I'm your co-host, Dr. Pedram Shojai.
And I'm Nick Palizzi. We're super excited to be bringing this information to you.
We've covered a lot of ground in the past few episodes and are really zeroing in on the root causes of exhaustion.
Today, we begin by focusing on the internal organs that run the show when it comes to energy metabolism. If they're not well tuned, it's nearly impossible to feel well.
Detoxification is a big player in the energy equation,
as is the need to have healthy digestion, absorption, and excretion.
When these are working well, so is life.
The body is a miraculous thing, and life itself is such a gift. When things are flowing smoothly, we get to enjoy our lives and have the energy needed to do so. When there's a challenge in these processes, fatigue and exhaustion are a common sign. Pedram's now going to introduce a group of healthcare professionals to help us understand one of the most important and overlooked organs in energy production, your liver. It turns out this organ is responsible for way more than we originally thought.
A healthy liver is a central player in how we function, and it's key in energy metabolism. Clearing toxins, both internal and external, has a lot to do with how much available energy we have. In an increasingly toxic world, taking out the trash is vitally important. When we do, the liver can handle its role of energy storage and transfer. And when we're bogged down with these toxins, the liver begins to falter under the weight of that workload. You get exhausted, or worse. Let's take a closer look at how the liver fits into things.
The main organ that I would say is the most important for energy and toxins is the liver. Your liver is sort of the guy when you go into the airport, the immigration officer that says, you get to go in this line, you get to go here, you don't get in, and you need to go back home. So he's the regulator, and that's the liver. So the liver has to package that toxin and send it to be urinated out, to be sweated out, or to go out through your stool, or to be breathed out.
As a doctor of Oriental medicine, one of the things that we learn about is the importance of the liver. And what we're seeing in today's world where people are literally wired and tired, I'm sure you've heard that expression. What we often see when I take pulses, like I've got a true pulse on humanity, not only by taking literally, there's like 26 different main pulses, but looking at the tongue, but very often when I say wired, there's a pulse, the liver pulse is literally wired. It's like this taut string. And what we see is an epidemic of liver qi stagnation. Qi is life force.
Chinese medicine, we try to regulate the liver, make it work properly, and that's what detoxifies the body. And there's so many poisons that the liver now has to deal with, which evolutionarily were not there. So that's making sure we cleans out the toxic burden in liver and kidney is really important.
When you have liver qi stagnation, that affects blood flow. That affects how qi, energy, moves throughout your body, how your brain is being nourished, how your gut is being nourished, how blood is circulating throughout your entire body. So liver qi stagnation, we're seeing, literally a bad mood nation. We're seeing people who are not sleeping well because of this lack of healthy transport of oxygen throughout the body. So the Chinese medicine is quite brilliant because it's not just looking at diseases, it's looking at patterns and not treating any two people alike.
The liver has to convert the things it wants to dump out of your body into water-soluble substances. That's what it spends most of its time doing. So the liver it does break down fats, and so fats that are a little bit more complex than just one molecule, the liver will break down into simple fats, and so your body can use those. One of the main things that your body does with fats that the liver metabolizes is to make the very hormones that you need. And so sex hormones are fat-based, and adrenal hormones, so testosterone, all of the estrogens, estriol, estradiol, all of those, plus cortisol, the main anti-inflammatory hormone, are all made out of fat. They're made out of cholesterol, which is a fat, and the liver makes cholesterol from those fats and then passes that on to those glands to make those hormones.
It's the most important organ to make sure is functioning well. And it is our metabolic center. It is the main organ that is actually converting your thyroid hormone to the form you need. So it's going to affect your weight. It's helping with blood sugar. So it's absolutely going to affect your cravings, your energy.
As it is, the liver is so busy helping us to detoxify us from all the different toxins that we're ingesting every day, whether it's in the food or whether we're drinking a lot of caffeine or whether you're a smoker or whatever it is, that hormones kind of take a second priority. If the liver can't cope with all the toxins that we're bombarding our body every day, it's like a sieve. It gets a little, stuck there, right? It's like you're going to clean it out. And the hormones are going to be the ones that do not get picked up, and they get recirculated back into the body, causing the havoc, hormonal havoc.
We hear so much about the heart, the brain, the stomach, and the liver, I think, is often overlooked. Can you explain how it works and how it gets rid of toxins?
It's really important when there's a lot of toxicity around us, the liver gets burdened, the body gets burdened, the lymph nodes get burdened. People stop sweating. If they're not moving and getting it out, there's sort of this toxicity now internally that the body produces. The gut bacteria start secreting toxins. And so the toxins I think most people think of they think it's outside of us. It's what we're breathing. It's the mercury in the tuna or the mercury in the fillings or the lead pipes or things that are outside. But we're also forgetting that the body also creates toxins. The gut bacteria create toxins, and there's this concept of endotoxemia that can actually affect the brain and make your gut even more leaky. And so toxicity, basically, again, that demand supply is affected because it puts less of the supply that you have, but the demand's still there, and it's just an imbalance between the two.
What's the best way? What can we do to have a healthy liver and support optimal detoxification?
So detoxification is a very interesting topic to me, and one of the things I really mention quite a bit is something called the relationship between flow and function. So where we send flow in our bodies is where we're sending function. So for example, if at rest I'm sending 50% of my blood flow to my liver and kidneys, then that probably means those organs are important. It probably means they're carrying out an important function. And so the main function of the liver and kidneys is detoxification and basically filtration. So that's the job of those two organs. So 50% of our blood is going there at rest. That means there's a lot of energy being devoted to that process.
In the liver in particular, we take toxins, and there's kind of this two-step detoxification process. The first, we take the toxin, we make it less toxic, we change it into an intermediate. That's phase one. And then phase two of that elimination process is taking that intermediate, making it more water soluble so that we can excrete it.
Now, the best way to increase any function in the body is to increase circulation to that body part. So if I want to increase blood flow to your brain or increase cognitive function, I have to increase blood flow to that area. If I want to increase how well somebody can curl, right, a weight, then I have to send blood to the biceps, or a squat, I have to send it to the glutes and lower extremities. So where I send flow is where I send function. So if I want to understand how to improve somebody's detoxification, I want to understand how can I improve circulation to that body part. And the best way to improve circulation to that body part is to put somebody in as much of a state of rest as possible. So things that are very effective at improving detoxification are sleep. Okay. When somebody's under stress, which is the typical North American or anyone living in a developed country, if you're under a lot of stress, you're decreasing blood flow from the liver and kidneys from 50% down to 5%. So there's a significant decrease in blood flow to those body parts when we're in a state of stress. So if I give somebody the best supplements, the best nutrients, the best herbs, whatever I'm giving that person to increase detoxification, it's only going to work if I first increase circulation to that body part.
What I do in my practice is we give people herbal liver detox formulas to maintain that. I think in Chinese medicine it's very easy to detox the liver. It's this whole thing of systemic detoxification, doing all the purges and the fasting, it's a waste of time. Most detoxing happens in the liver. In Chinese medicine, we try to regulate the liver, make it work properly, and that's what detoxifies the body. And there's so many poisons that the liver now has to deal with, which evolutionarily were not there. So that's taking off making sure we can cleanse out the toxic burden in liver and kidney is really important.
When you see that liver qi stagnation, acupuncture is a great therapy to really help move the qi. When you move the qi, you move the blood. When you move the blood, your essence, your whole body is getting nourished more beneficially.
The key is getting people to be in a more parasympathetic state. If I can accomplish that through meditation, through vacation, if I can accomplish that through better sleep, deeper sleep quality, then that's going to increase that person's detoxification capabilities. We're all exposed to toxins. And so it's important for us to optimize our own internal systems in order for that process to occur.
We always say remove the obstacles to cure. Remove the things that are not adding energy. They're not helping. Remove those out and help the body detoxify daily on a daily basis. Don't just do a once a year cleanse or a fast, or how can this be a lifestyle that you continue to do daily to reduce the burden on the body?
You want to eat clean. You want to not eat antibiotics. You want to eat organically whenever possible, as possible, according to your budget. This is the big problem. In Mississippi, which had the highest rates of obesity, they looked at the diet and they said, it's cheaper for people to buy fast food and packaged food than to cook from ingredients. And I was astounded by that. I was injured by that it's cheaper to buy packaged foods and fast food than to buy, natural components. That's sad.
The next thing is exposure. So you have to have awareness of what your exposure level is if you're living in a city versus living in the country. What's the quality of the water that you're drinking? What's the quality of the air that you're breathing? So having air filters, water filters, those things can be very important. So we're eliminating or reducing toxins at the source level. It's important nowadays to actually allow your house to breathe. Right, most people don't realize how much of a difference that makes, getting fresh air into their home and really optimizing that environment. And we always feel energized with fresh air, right, versus stale air. So we want to have circulation and healthy air circulating through our home so that we eliminate that exposure of toxins. Keeping things very airtight, like a new car, right? You want to make sure you're ventilating your new car. These are common sources of exposure that people have, and they don't realize it because it's not something they're paying very close attention to. And it's something that's almost impossible to avoid unless you're paying close attention to it.
When we're thinking about toxins, we want to think about how we can reduce our exposure to them. So reducing things in the environment. For women specifically, I always talk about makeup, because makeup is one of those things where it's very unregulated and they can put all sorts of endocrine disruptors and toxins in makeup. So finding really clean sources of makeup for women is really important. So reducing your overall exposure. The second part of that, because I know that we're never going to be fully free of being exposed to toxins, is the ability to get rid of them once we are exposed to them. So we want to be looking at how we can be upregulating our detoxification systems. And that's primarily in the liver. There's a lot of different ways that we detoxify. I often will coach men and women to be consuming more cruciferous vegetables, things like broccoli and Brussels sprouts and cauliflower. These have very important compounds called sulforaphanes in them that are known to upregulate that second phase of detoxification. And there's many examples of that in nature. We have the anthocyanins, the blackberries, the blueberries, the cherries, the darker berries that are, again, known for, they're very antioxidant rich, but they also upregulate that phase 2 detoxification.
So a couple of things that I absolutely love when it comes to supporting the liver is bitter. So anything that tastes bitter is gonna be hugely beneficial for the liver. Partly is because bitter will stimulate the gallbladder to release bile, and bile is a wonderful substance that binds up a lot of the different hormones, including dirty estrogens, and then it supports the liver in a detoxification pathway. So so if you think about it, bitter could mean any bitter vegetables. For example, the cruciferous vegetables, so things like broccoli, kale, cauliflower, broccoli sprouts, right? All the radishes are all wonderful bitters, and they are going to be so beneficial for us to support our liver detoxification pathways. And I'm talking here about, something as simple as 3 to 4 cups of these vegetables a day, preferably cooked, added on to. So basically I'm saying, toss away that salad that has lettuce in it and bring on arugula, because it is a bitter and it's also the cruciferous vegetable that I talked about, which is going to be so beneficial for somebody to eat.
We often talk about in context of females an idea called estrogen dominance. Now, the name itself is a little non-specific. It really should be estrogen dominance in the second half of the cycle of your menstrual cycle, in that luteal phase. But if you are not able to appropriately metabolize estrogens and appropriately dispose of them, estrogen is going to continue to exert its growth-like effects on the body. And in a female, in the second half of her cycle, we want her progesterone levels to be higher than her estrogens so that we can, it's just the normal cycle of things, but the second half of her cycle, of her menstrual cycle, is involved in trying to develop that egg to, there's, the hope that there's going to be a fertilization of the egg and then to develop it into a pregnancy. So that is, specifically for females, it's, reducing your toxins in terms of the everyday life with the makeup, but also leveling up your detoxification capacity so that you have regular estrogen metabolism.
If you think about it, in every culture, there is an element of bitter. When we do our little digestives, as the French call it, right? Like you have a little drink before a meal. Well, guess what? Most of those drinks traditionally have always been bitter, right? Even beer, for that matter, is bitter. And the reason why we do that is because we're priming our digestion to produce all the juices to break down the food. The more you're breaking it down, the better it is, the easier it is for the liver to digest. And so bitters are just a wonderful addition to liver detoxification. But I also love a couple of supplements that are really beneficial as well. DIM, which stands for dialdehydomethane, is a wonderful substance that is actually found in the cruciferous vegetables, but it comes in a very concentrated form in the supplement that can really help very quickly detoxify, especially from estrogens. There's also another one called sulforaphane, and which is found in broccoli sprouts. And sulforaphane is a very powerful substance, including we're now finding that is able to kill cancer stem cells in breast cancer in women who have estrogenic cancer. So imagine you're talking about 75% of women who have breast cancer in our country have that because of estrogen dominance, and you have this little guy called sulforaphane, the little tender broccoli sprouts, the substance that's in there that can actually kill the stem cell of the cancer. I mean, how powerful of a thought is that? And the actual studies that show that is absolutely possible. So if you put all the power of these foods together, it's not only does it make it a highly delectable and delicious plate, if you will, but also just makes it a hugely healing plate as well.
So I think it's really important when we're talking about this exhaustion epidemic that we're going deeper, that we're really looking at some of these root causes that Western medicine might be overlooking or does not know anything about. This is where, thank God for this great increase in integrative medicine and functional medicine, where we know to look for these possible pathogens.
What struck me most here is how 50% of our blood flow goes to the liver and kidneys at rest. That means when we're relaxing, we're spending a vast amount of our energy clearing toxins so the body can stay optimal. With stress, that number goes down to 5% of blood flow. No wonder we're all exhausted. We're so cranked up, we can't take out the trash and it stacks up. We get overwhelmed. The price we pay starts with having less energy. Here are some of the key takeaways from this section. The liver is the main detoxification organ in our bodies. It converts thyroid hormones, so if it's sluggish, it can lead to weight gain. The liver gets burdened with internal and external toxins. Dysbiotic gut bacteria create endotoxins. Exotoxins can be a variety of chemicals in our environment. 50% of our blood goes to our liver and kidneys at rest. Stress brings down the blood flow to the liver and the kidneys for detoxification from 50% down to 5%. Where we send blood flow is where we send function. The best things for detoxification are sleep and mitigating exposure so that we can upregulate detoxification. Bitters support the liver by stimulating the gallbladder to release bile. Sulforaphanes in cruciferous vegetables help support detoxification.
Part of what you get when you purchase the series is our comprehensive food and supplement guide to detoxification. When we made this series, we assigned our research and scientific teams to put together amazing resources for our viewers, and they come with the packages you can purchase. This is how we can afford to share this content broadly with millions of people and still make revenue to keep filming more like this. Scroll below this video to get the whole series along with the resources. It is professionally designed to get you the help you need, and it also supports the work we're doing here. Thank you. The next major area that needs our attention is digestion.
Yes, food gives us energy, but that's only if we digest and assimilate it well. That's seldom the case in our world.
With all the toxins in the soil and preservatives in the food, it's hard to get healthy nutrients into our cells.
And that's assuming we slow down, chill, and chew our food in the first place.
Life is fast, but digestion needs time to happen the right way.
We need to learn how to optimize this process better. Food should be giving us more energy, not draining us and making us more tired. Being fatigued after a meal is a telltale sign of digestive insufficiency. Having sugar cravings after we eat points to blood sugar and insulin issues. These are all too common in our modern world. Nick's going to now take us down this road as we explore the topic of digestion and how it relates to the energy you want in your life.
Taking food in is a complicated process that has lots of moving parts. From producing enough hydrochloric acid to having frequent elimination, there's a lot that has to go right for us to feel energized. Life has gotten fast, but our biology has not evolved enough for us to simply scarf down meals and still function well. Honoring our bodies and the processes needed to feed ourselves is not an option. There's no shortcut or hack to this, so we may as well get it right so we can feel better. Let's explore.
So digestion, of course, is really important when it comes to energy because our food is not the only source of energy, but it's a major source of energy for our body, for our cells, and it's the building material for our cells. So what we eat is actually very vital to our health and very vital to our overall cellular function. And so we need to have good nutrient intake, but not only that, it's not about the intake, it's also the processing of what we're intaking. So you and I could eat the exact same food, but if I'm digesting that meal more thoroughly, if I'm chewing that meal better, if I'm metabolizing that meal better and assimilating that meal better, I'm going to get more out of that same food than perhaps somebody else would.
People are getting more and more malnourished just because if you deal with poor digestion for years and years and years, over time, even simple things like protein, you're not breaking it down to the amino acids that you need for your organs to function. You know, to just produce even some certain neurotransmitters, you need basic amino acids. And I work with a lot of people who can't break down protein very well. They end up going vegan because they're just not digesting the protein that they eat. You know, as I've done this work, I'm like, I don't know that vegan is actually the answer. It's just that you're not digesting your protein because your digestion is so impaired from, you know, everything that's happened over your life.
Digestion requires an enormous amount of hydrochloric acid, especially to digest protein. And a lot of people today are trying to eat more paleo, which means they're trying to get in a little bit more meat and fat, which is great. It's a really good idea. But it's estimated that 90% of Americans don't produce enough stomach acid or hydrochloric acid. And as a result of that, they simply can't digest and break down their protein. And it requires an enormous amount of energy. And when you can't break down your protein into amino acids, that means that you're not making the protein transporters, or what I call the protein taxis in the body. And those are things like globulin and albumin. And those are responsible for carrying hormones and nutrients throughout the body. And so if we don't have those protein transporters or taxis, we're not getting our nutrients spread. So what that means is when we don't have those transporters, we're not carrying our nutrients and hormones appropriately throughout the body.
You might be putting good food in, but if you're not breaking it down and absorbing it, then you're not truly getting that nourishment. So there's a saying, you are what you eat, but truly it's you are what you absorb. You need to get it into your body, and you need your digestive system working well in order for that to happen. We can eat while we're still in fight or flight because we're driving here or there, we're in the middle of a meeting or whatever, and our digestive system is not going to be functioning very well when we're not in rest and digest, which is where we digest. So we're in fight or flight, we're out of that.
When digestion is compromised, beyond obvious issues like heartburn or acid reflux, which is so common today. A lot of people taking acid blocking medications, which further disrupts their ability to digest protein. It takes an enormous amount of energy for the system to try to break that protein down without that appropriate acid. And that can lead to huge issues of fatigue. And if we can't digest and absorb our protein, we also can't digest our minerals, especially something like iron, which commonly leads to iron anemia, another really common source of fatigue.
Most people eat for entertainment and for emotional reasons. They're not even in touch with, I work with people every day, they're not in touch with the food for fuel. They're eating for other reasons, which then depletes energy. Digestion is the number one system that takes up energy, that leaks energy, that uses energy.
Gut intuition, that's a big factor. We're always looking outside of ourselves for the answers. And so even when it comes to food, we're looking to the newest book to teach us how to eat. So people are switching around from diet to diet, next fad. And in my experience, they're just cutting off this intuition. I mean, animals don't need nutritionists. And yet they figure out what to eat. Like, how do bears know when they get out of hibernation that they should eat moths? Because moths are really high in fat. They eat some moths, they get their energy level up, they don't have to do quite as much work. It's better than eating a bunch of berries. They get like double the amount of calories, per gram. So they go eat moths. How do they know how to do that? Is it because their mom taught them? At what point in history did they figure that out? There was no nutritionist like leading a little Blackboard class. Here's how you do it, guys. They figured it out. And they're in touch with their instincts. And I really believe that we've cut off our instincts about what our body needs.
I think food is an interesting discussion, but it isn't the answer to improve energy. In fact, sometimes eliminating food will bring a person's energy back. I've witnessed this my whole life. I was a professional dancer for many years. And when I had less food, I was actually more energetic. I am a yoga teacher and I've been practicing yoga for years. When I eat less food and breathe deeper, I'm much more energetic than if I overdo the food.
And this is why we see so much individualization in what a person needs to eat. I mean, a lot of us are mutts. We have a lot of different genetics, a lot of different, family backgrounds. And so tradition has been lost for many of us. We don't have many of us don't have that lineage to trace back and say, here's what my ancestors ate. This is probably what works well with my genetics and my body. And so at this point in time, we really need to tap into that gut intuition and start to figure out, what is my body asking for right now?
So the body first consolidates toxins and wastes and then eliminates. How important is that elimination process to our energy levels?
You're going to be fatigued if you don't poop, right? Because you're reabsorbing just think of all the toxins that we have in our body if we don't eliminate what we've eaten. It's one big hole, one big tube from the mouth to the anus. And it needs to go in smoothly and come out smoothly.
So many people have compromised digestion, they have leaky gut, there's permeability in the gut where it shouldn't exist. The gallbladder carries the toxins into the small intestine where it's then eliminated through your stools. But if it stays in the small intestine and gets reabsorbed,
then it adds to the toxic burden.
You have to poop well, and nobody's pooping. They're either diarrhea or they're not pooping for days. I mean, ideally, a healthy gut is going to poop 2 times a day, right? Or 3 times a day. I tell my patients you need to poop like your dog does. Your dog eats and goes and poops. It's as simple as that. That's how we're supposed to eat. A good, healthy digestive system is going to do that. Most people are very slow in transit there. A lot of people are, and they don't poop for days. That's not healthy. Think of that as that reabsorbs back into your colon. What you eat today should be 100% gone tomorrow.
A typical meal in a typical digestive system takes about 2 hours to fully be digested and moved out of the stomach and into the intestines. It's going to continue to be worked on through the intestinal system for the rest of the absorption and processing, but around 2 hours.
2 or 3 times a day. It shouldn't be difficult. Poop, or it shouldn't just be diarrhea. It's very important. I mean, it's extremely important.
Helping to heal the gut, helping to continue, the digestive cascade, your motility wave, making sure that food moves through your system and waste moves through your system. All of those things can help you really open up the pathways so that elimination of toxins flows naturally.
Nobody's pooping, but if you take your magnesium, 80% of us are deficient in magnesium. If you'll take your magnesium at night when you go to bed, most people poop better.
So what can we do to help this whole digestion process go smoothly?
We have a 5-step process to optimizing digestion without taking any additional pills or supplements, because most people don't want to do that, right? Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, hey, I wish I could take more pills. So we start, when it comes to digestion, with this 5-step process. The first thing is you want to choose the right foods. And so you want to choose the foods for who you want to become versus who you are today or who you were yesterday. So you want to eat for your future. And so that's very important. Your plate is actually a selfie because it's going to become the cells in your body. You want to also choose how you feel about that food. You should feel good about that meal. You should feel positive towards that meal. If you're saying, oh my God, I hate eating healthy, then how you're going to emotionally digest that food is going to be very different versus having a positive attitude and, and really acknowledging how that food is going to cherish and, nurture the body that you have. So choose how you feel. Choose what you eat. The next one is chew. You've got to chew because your stomach doesn't have teeth. So it's important that people realize digestion actually starts in the mouth. And by chewing our food, we're actually unlocking all the nutrition that's locked up in plant cells. So all that positive nutrition is lost if we don't break open the cell wall. So chewing our food is very critical because it allows us to extract more nutrition. It allows us to more thoroughly assimilate the foods that we're eating, allows us to taste our food. Tasting our food tells our brain to tell our digestive organs what type of nutrient breakdown is coming, how much fat, how much protein, how much carbohydrates is coming down the hatch. So by chewing our food, we increase surface area, we get better digestion, we get more surface area for our enzymes to digest our food, we unpack the nutrition that's in our food, and we also get our body in a more parasympathetic state. We get our body into an actual state of rest and digest. If people inhale their food, they're not allowing their body to appropriately identify what breakdown of nutrients is coming, so they can't digest that food. They can't make the right chemistry in their gut because their chemistry relies on them actually tasting the food. So that signaling is actually very important. The next thing is you want to cherish. So you want to have a moment of gratitude, just realizing all the moving parts that are required to put that food in front of you. There could be hundreds of people involved in that process. There could be millions of dollars of equipment and machinery and technology involved in putting that food in front of your table. So having a moment of gratitude, I think, is very important. The next one is chill. You've got to be in a relaxed state. So you've got to be sitting, you've got to be, in a parasympathetic state. You can't be in a stressed out state trying to rush that meal. You've got to really cherish it. So you're really in a relaxed, gratuitous state. And the last one is check. So you want to check your stool daily, right? You should be having a bowel movement at least 1 to 3 times per day. You want to check that stool daily, just physically inspect it, right? And there's a whole different conversation there, but physically inspect it and at least once a year get a stool test because this is going to tell you how well you're unpacking the energy from the food that you're eating. And so all you have to do is choose how you feel about the foods that you're eating, choose the right foods. You've got to chew that food, really easy. You got to cherish it, you got to be chilled out, and you got to check. And if you can do those things, you'll get deep insights into how you can optimize nutritional energy intake.
I believe that once you really tap into your gut intuition and you learn it, you get your mental, taste buds, and gut intuition all aligned. I always say you want all voices to be on the same page, because you have to sort through all these different voices. Okay, my head wants this, my mouth wants this, my belly wants this, which one do I choose? Well, you just stay mindful. At first, you stay mindful and you pick one. Pay attention. How does it make you feel? What was the effects of that? Would you do that again? Was that the right decision? And over time, you can get those to all line up. And the truth is your taste buds change depending on what you eat. And your taste buds, I believe, also change depending on your microbial makeup. When I first started doing this work, I was just making a ton of fermented vegetables in my house. And I lived with a bunch of roommates. I was in college, and I was putting all the excess fermented veggies in the fridge in the garage. And people would come over, they'd plop money in a jar and buy sauerkraut, all these different flavors of sauerkraut from me. And it was this sort of impromptu, random side hustle, And I had my friends' roommates coming over, and they would try the ferments. My roommates were like, oh, you got to try this. This is so amazing. Now, it was raw, unpasteurized, so it still had all the probiotics in it. It's not what you buy in the store, like back then especially. You couldn't buy this in the store. And so people would take a bite, and most people liked it, but some people didn't like it the first time they tried it. And what was interesting is over time I started seeing a pattern. The people that didn't like it would come back to me a week later, and they would buy a jar. And they said, I know I didn't like this the first time, but I have literally not stopped thinking about it. And I had to come back and get a jar because my body wants it now. And now they love the flavor. Within a week, from one bite that they didn't like, their taste buds changed and their body said, I want this now. So I saw a pattern, and people were saying those exact same words each time. And I was like, okay, this is fascinating, because there is this connection between the gut and the taste buds. We talk about the gut brain. I think there's a gut taste bud axis that we're missing out on that's constantly evolving, and that acquired taste is part of what happens when we get a desired effect from the food. So ultimately, if you know what you want, and you want to be energetic, and you want to be healthy, and you want to love what you're doing in life, you're going to be making decisions to put food in your body that will give you that desired result. And so over time, all of those voices line up and connect, but you have to be in touch with that gut intuition piece. You have to make sure you're loving what you do in life, your contribution to the world. Your relationships have to be healthy, and you have to be making some sort of stable income so that you're not stressed about that piece either.
You want to start with really supporting robust digestion. That's where I start with everyone. You've got to get yourself digesting well. And then also bring in that movement. Bring in that intentional release of stress. It's going to allow you to sleep better. It's going to keep your weight in balance. It's going to make your life so much better. And then work on those stress reduction exercises. Bring in that sleep hygiene. Make your life balanced.
Slowing down to appreciate and chew our food is sage wisdom with scientific backing. We need to optimize the digestive process so we can get the most energy out of our food. What goes up must come down, and in the modern world, sometimes we need to cool our jets to have enough energy when we need it. At my house, we've been practicing gratitude and taking a few deep breaths before meals, and it's really helped. I recommend trying it. Here are some of the main points to remember from this section. Digestion isn't only about intake, it's also about how we process that food. Digestion also requires a lot of hydrochloric acid. 90% of Americans don't produce enough to adequately break down proteins in their meals. HCl production requires an enormous amount of energy, so having low energy can lead to digestive problems and vice versa. Without the essential amino acids needed, we can't make globulin and albumin, which carry hormones and nutrients around the body. Acid-blocking medications further compromise protein breakdown, so we can't absorb amino acids or iron. 80% of us are low in magnesium. Here's the 5-step process to digesting better by Dr. Sachin Patel. Choose the right foods for what you want to become. Eat for your future. You need to choose slowly and thoroughly. Cherish your food. Take a moment of gratitude before each meal. Chill, relax, and enjoy your mealtime. Check your stool daily. Get a test once a year.
We heard one of our experts mention that sometimes we can feel more energy by simply not eating. What's that all about?
Fasting is a practice that's been with us for thousands of years.
Sages and saints have used it to clear their minds and connect with the divine.
Now we understand that the burning of fat in ketosis provides lots of energy to the brain.
And now athletes and regular people are fasting for health and aesthetic reasons all the time.
Fasting has become a popular subject again lately, and there's some real merit in this strategy. But there are also pitfalls to avoid and lots of bad advice out there. Doing it right can be tremendously beneficial to our health. So how can we do that? Pedram's now going to take us into our next segment on fasting and caloric restriction.
The body needs a break sometimes. And much like our busy minds, our guts aren't getting the downtime needed to repair and reset. Fasting can be a powerful way of doing this, but only when done right. There are so many opinions about this, but most experts agree that getting your body ready for the hormetic stress of fasting is key. We need metabolic flexibility before going too deep into longer fasts. Let's explore all of this with our experts.
Most people in the modern world, their current dietary regimen is sort of the opposite of fasting. It's a very high level of food frequency and what's called very long feeding windows. So there's research that's been done by a researcher named Satchitananda Panda, and what he's found when he analyzed via an app where people track their food intake on their phone, what he found is that the typical Westerner eats about 10 times per day. And that doesn't mean 10 meals per day, that means 10 instances of consuming food, whether it's a meal or a snack each day. In addition, the typical feeding window, that's from the time from the first bite of food to the last bite of food, was about 15 or 16 hours. Now, if you think about it, if you're in bed for 8 hours and there's 24 hours in the day, basically what that means is that people are consuming food almost from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed.
You know, one of the things that people say is, oh, eating frequently increases my metabolism. Well, yes, it does, but that's because it takes metabolism to actually digest your food. So we're doing it at the expense of improving detoxification. We're doing it at the expense of repair and regeneration. We're doing it at the expense of allowing our endocrine system to heal and take a bit of a break, and allow our digestive system to take a heal and break, to allow our immune system to take a break and heal and repair itself. So minimizing food intake, or at least having periods of time where we're minimizing food intake either through calorie restriction or fasting, can be very restorative to that system.
So the combination of these very long feeding windows, 15 or 16 hours, combined with a very high frequency of eating, the result of that is that people lose what's called metabolic flexibility. They lose their capacity to shift seamlessly between burning off the food that just entered the system, or during periods without food, to tap into stored fuels like glycogen, like stored body fat, and burn those for fuel. Ideally, you have metabolic flexibility to a high enough degree that you can shift between those fuel sources and between carbs and between fats seamlessly without your energy levels dropping. The problem is, because of these two factors in the modern world, the high frequency of eating and the very long feeding windows, people lose that metabolic flexibility. And the result of this is that it makes fasting very difficult. So if you take somebody that's lost their metabolic flexibility and you say, okay, hey, go on this 2-day, 3-day, 5-day, 10-day fast, they will experience a horrendous amount of symptoms in most cases. It will be very, very hard for them. And it's really just too much for their body to handle.
Imagine your digestive system like a car wash, okay? And so you're sending cars through is like sending food through. There's a sequence of processes and steps that rely on the previous step being done that take place. So as these cars are going through, you're getting a good result at the end, and the system is working properly. at some point you're going to need to give that car wash a break. At some point you're going to have to, give that system a break to repair it, to regenerate, to replace parts. You can't just keep sending cars through 24/7. Okay? So not eating or fasting gives your digestive system a break, it gives your liver a break, gives your pancreas a break. And these are very energetically intense processes. It takes about 40% of your daily energy to digest the food that you're having. So if we can liberate that energy, then now that energy can be mobilized to do other things. That same energy, instead of being used to digest a meal, can be used to repair the same system.
Before you tell somebody to go from here to here, all the way into fasting, I think it's much smarter to slowly and systematically taper down the feeding windows to 12 hours or below. 12, 11, 10, somewhere in there is generally a good range for most people. And to start experimenting with longer periods in between meals. So people start to reteach their body, rewire their body back into metabolic flexibility. So their body learns again how to switch between carbs and fats, and how to switch between burning off food that they just ate and tapping into stored carbs in the muscles and in the liver, and stored body fat for burning fuel as well. Once you do that, now you can start to play around with, more extreme time-restricted feeding. So for example, 6-hour feeding windows on some days, or just one meal per day on some days, or a 24-hour period of fasting, or a 36-hour period of fasting, or a 5-day fasting mimicking diet. So you have a variety of different things that you can do, and you can get those benefits of fasting, but I definitely recommend doing things in a smart and systematic way to build that metabolic flexibility first, and then start to experiment with fasting.
And then, for a lot of people, what I would recommend is, just trying to restrict your calories by not by restricting the amount of food that you eat, but by changing the types of foods that you eat. So if you wanted to get 1,000 calories through vegetables, that's a lot of vegetables. That's a lot of fiber. That's a lot of phytonutrition. So you don't want to we don't recommend people restricting their calories, but we recommend them eating foods that are bulky, that are naturally calorie restrictive, so they feel full, they feel satiated, and they have good movement as well, and waste elimination from their body too.
For many people, not eating is just not motivating. That's not appealing. So knowing the benefits could be a great motivator. What are the benefits?
Fasting has a lot of different benefits. There's a lot of research coming out showing that it can improve various parameters of metabolic health, blood sugar control. It can stimulate stem cells to enter circulation and help repair tissues. It can stimulate autophagy, which is sort of repair of damaged parts or of the cell, and cleanup of cellular junk, and a variety of other different benefits.
The other thing that fasting does, which is phenomenal, is it increases insulin sensitivity, which is an epidemic in the United States. Where I'm testing this in so many of my patients, and I'm finding that so many people are insulin sensitive. That's like, I always give the analogy of school buses taking kids to school. Well, if the door is shut and those kids, that bus can't get in, you're not going to get that glucose in. And so we want to open the doors. One of the ways to open that door is to fast. The fasting gets that insulin to be less sensitive and get that glucose into the cells. So one of the top reasons I would say to consider looking into fasting is it increases mitochondria and it increases insulin sensitivity.
The other thing I'll throw in terms of benefits when we are in a fasted state is the idea of spring cleaning. So the technical term is autophagy. You break down the word. Aptos is self, and phagos is eating. So it's self-eating. Essentially, the immune system now is going to go through and sort of clean up the stuff that's not working really well. So damaged cells, mutated cells, little bits of pieces in the cytosol that shouldn't be there. The immune system will kind of go engulf it and then get rid of it. And the same is true for our mitochondria. We have mitophagy as well, where in a fasted state, we will get rid of the mitochondria that are a little bit sluggish, they're not working the way that they should, and the really great thing around that is it's a really great long play for energetic production. You want the fastest, most efficient mitochondria that you can. So when you break your fast, the renewal of new mitochondria, the renewal of new cells that have been destroyed, makes you essentially younger because your cells are younger.
We've heard so many positive things about fasting, but there are risks when not done properly that people need to be aware of. What are these risks?
Well, fasting is the latest craze right now. Intermittent fasting, people going on keto, people are all about fasting right now. Fasting mimicking diet. And we have many studies to show that fasting has major benefit on the metabolism. And it can help people restore even their insulin sensitivity. You know, if they can go from being pre-diabetic to normal from doing regular fasting. So there's definite benefit to fasting, but what I have found, and the reason that the work I do is called gut rebuilding, is that I have found that so many people are depleted that if they go into this fasting mode, which causes a little bit of depletion, like you have to have stores of nutrients and your body has to have, you know, all of the amino acids that it needs in order to do this fasting properly. If those aren't there, then fasting can be very depleting for certain people.
An increasingly common phenomenon in female athletes related to the growing popularity of fasting is fatigue and often endocrine dysfunction, amenorrhea, low bone density, etc., the so-called female athletic triad, which prior to this point was usually due to a female engaging in highly excessive endurance activity, like the quintessential high school female cross-country runner. The problem is that active females get those same issues if they're fasting longer than about 12 hours.
The people that I work with now, they can't fast yet. They have to rebuild their guts first. They have to rebuild their nutrient levels. They have to get their microbiome balanced. They have to really just get some consistency and stability in their lives and then practice shorter fasts once they're ready. And fasting is a muscle. You have to build it. You have to practice it. You know, a lot of people want to jump in. They're like, oh my gosh, fasting's great for me. I'm going to go and I'm going to fast for 5 days. You know, what I found is I work with people who try to do that and they crash and they burn and it's not good for them. So I think it just depends on where you're at. If you're in a good, healthy state, I think fasting is fantastic. If your body needs to be built back up, if you are depleted on any level, it may not be the right answer right now. You might have some preliminary work to do before it becomes something that's safe and healthy for you.
And so when you look at these 6-hour compressed feeding windows and 16+ hour intermittent fasts and weekly 24-hour fasts, for a female particularly, due to a hormone called kisspeptin that females have very high amounts of that males do not have, you experience a downregulation of something called gonadotropin-releasing hormone in females in response to the combination of excessive fasting and excessive exercise. And when that occurs, you see important fertility-based hormones like luteinizing hormone or follicle-stimulating hormone decrease. You see menstruation cease. You see bone density drop. You see estrogen and progesterone levels fall. And with females, I'd say that's one of the number one issues for active athletic females is many of them are getting caught up with this idea that fasting makes you live a long time. Fasting decreases mTOR and inflammation and increases, longevity. And the fact is it does not pair well for a female athlete in particular who's exercising during that fasted scenario.
I'd like to get a little more detail on the types of fasting and how to start. What can people expect when they begin a fast?
One of the things that we would recommend is if you're going to start fasting, if it's something that's new to you, don't go right into an 18-hour fast, right? Every person is going to be a little bit different. So you can start by pushing your breakfast out an hour, and then 2 hours, and then 3 hours, and then 4 hours, and find what's comfortable for you. You want to have a gap between one of your meals. Okay, you want to have about a 16-hour gap is what you want to work towards. but listen to your body, right? Just because it worked for somebody else, it doesn't mean it's going to work for you necessarily.
Often when people start fasting at the beginning, they may feel hungry, they may feel a little bit sluggish, and that's really because your body is not necessarily used to switching over to this mechanism for harnessing energy in a fasted state. But the more you do it, it's like a muscle, right? The more you flex it, the easier it is for you. And when we are in a fasted state, what we find is we are able now to harness our own potential stores of energy. So if you're not eating, we are going to, of course, you're not getting those exogenous or those external sources of precursors. Now your body has to look internally. So we go into the liver where we have stored glucose in the form of glycogen. Glycogen is now converted in the liver to glucose, and it serves as a food source for all the cells in the body. Most of us have about a 24-hour, about a day's worth of glycogen that's stored in the liver. And actually, a really cool fact, the liver, about 10% of the liver is glycogen. So it's about a tenth of the weight when we look at the liver is glycogen storage. So it's an incredible repository for glycogen. And once that runs out, we now go into the adipocytes or the fat cells. We go in, we take the triglyceride, because that's the storage form in our fat cells, and we break it up into fatty acids and a glycerin molecule. And then we are able to the fatty acids are able to serve as that substrate for energetic production. And then the glycerin goes back into the liver and through gluconeogenesis becomes glucose.
So there's different kinds of fasting. And so when I say fasting, I want to get into what are medically been shown to actually really help people. So there's time-restricted fasting. That means that you eat for 8 hours a day, let's say, or 12 hours a day, or a certain amount of time. So a lot of people are doing this. They're told, don't eat, until 8 a.m. and then stop eating at 6 p.m., for example. Time-restricted eating has its benefits for sure, and a lot of people, I would say, should be at least on a minimum 12 hours between two meals. And my favorite two are dinner to breakfast, because most of it you're sleeping. The next one is intermittent fasting, and this has a lot of new hype. A lot of doctors that I work with, they're seeing all the research on this, and that basically means for 1 to 3 days a week, let's say, non-consecutively, you are not eating. Intermittent fasting and time-restricted fasting, one of the downsides is if they're not eating well during the time they're supposed to, you can actually lose muscle. And so people will lose weight and they feel good, but we want to make sure they're not losing muscle. They're losing visceral fat. They're losing the fat that's around their organs, right? So that's really important.
Some people might experience headaches when they start fasting. Some people might experience low blood sugar or fogginess when they start fasting. So again, pay attention to what your body's trying to tell you. Different ways of fasting can be water fasts. A water fast is where all you drink is water for a period of time. Some people do that for 24 hours. Some people do that for 72 hours. Some people even longer than that. Another type of fast is a dry fast where you don't eat or drink anything. That's probably one of the most challenging fasts for people, but can be very, very beneficial. Again, if you can start with 12 hours, and then work your way up hour by hour every week, then that's one way to increase your resilience and give your body a chance to get used to that concept. But if you can do a 24-hour fast once a week, that would be very beneficial for most people. Some people are seeing really great results eating every other day. So, it's every alternate day you're actually eating food. So you're giving your body a complete break for a day, and then you're eating a healthy meal the next day, and then you're skipping a day, and then you're eating again. So that type of fasting can be very beneficial too.
Intermittent fasting is a new word for things that people are interested in now, and the idea just is to limit the amount of hours that you are eating to some specific interval, and there are many, many ways to do it. People skip certain days of the week, they skip certain hours of the day, but all the natural healing systems recommend eating during a relatively restricted interval during the day. So even if you're eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it's relatively condensed, and most of the time you're not eating. Of course, 8 hours of that you're sleeping, but the most basic intermittent fasting is just don't eat after 5 o'clock or whatever the time is, and then you don't eat until 8 o'clock in the morning. So for most of your 24-hour day, you're not eating. Your body then is motivated to detoxify, but there are many other different kinds. And so it's a way to promote this detoxifying process and just enhance it a little bit.
So we have this incredible ability, we have this incredible mechanism for actually continuing to eat. Like our body is continuing to eat even in a fasted state. We're just eating our own reserves of food. So I love it as a proxy. I love it as, combining a fasted state and some of the benefits that we see with that, along with, the benefits that we see from playing around with our macronutrients in a fed state.
One of my favorite ways to help my patients with longevity, stem cell reproduction, and just helping them with their brain health is through fasting mimicking. So basically, if your body thinks it's fasting, you can't be eating. And that's very difficult to do. It's very difficult to just have water for 3 or 4 or 5 days. Those exist, but they're difficult to do. So research shows that after third day of not eating, so let's say you have first, second, third day where you're eating water, you're just drinking. After the third day is when all the really cool stuff happens. That's when the body starts actually creating stem cells. That's when you go into ketosis and your brain now starts actually making more mitochondria and you just feel energized. Well, this is difficult to do. It's very difficult to put people, and it can be very dangerous if not supervised medically, to ask someone to go on a prolonged fast, right? And so I use something called fasting mimicking diet, where your gut gets a little bit of food, but your cells think that they're fasting. And it's a 5-day fast that you can do once a month for 3 months, and then eat however you like on the other days. And this has been researched by Dr. Longo. I've used this in practice a lot, and it's phenomenal. It can really help burn that visceral fat. It can help with stem cells and pain. It can help with autoimmune disease and your immune system. It can help energy, absolutely. And people feel smarter, they feel younger, their brain starts working again because now they're not using glucose as food. They're getting to use that fat, or that going into that ketosis, which again is done by the liver. It's the liver's role to help with that.
Our ancestors had intermittent fasting of every type of necessity because food just wasn't available sometimes, and they would go for a day or a week without food. So our omnivorous body is very flexible and able to make those adjustments. And many people feel like now that it's just basically a part of the human condition, that we weren't meant to eat consistently, or certainly not to graze or to eat 18 hours a day. So any kind of restriction where we limit the total length of time of our eating and allow our bodies more time to detoxify seems to be a benefit.
There's different kinds of fasts. I would say just try all of them. There's nothing wrong with it, but please speak to a doctor and make sure you're supervised and you're doing it correctly so that you don't have low blood sugar and faint, so that you don't get a headache and, just be complaining that this isn't working. And also that you're not losing muscle and losing fat around the organs, the visceral fat.
I like that car wash analogy a lot. Sometimes you've got to shut down the line for maintenance and repairs. So when's the last time you've done that for your gut? With time-restricted eating, shorter feeding windows, water fasting, dry fasting, fasting mimicking diets, there are so many options out there. That said, heed the warnings of our experts and make sure you ease into fasting if your body still lacks metabolic flexibility. You can get there. Just take your time and do it right. The science is clear. Fasting can really help your body recover and optimize your energy metabolism, but you weren't born yesterday and likely have some history to work through. Be patient and let the body develop resilience as you allow it to heal. Here's some key things to remember from this section. Here's a snapshot of our current problem. Typical Westerners eat 10 times a day. And our typical feeding window is almost 16 hours in a day. This leads to a loss of metabolic flexibility, and it makes fasting difficult. 40% of your daily energy goes towards digestion. Think about the importance of that. Slowly tapering down feeding windows and taking longer periods between meals is a good way to rebalance internal systems and regain metabolic flexibility. You can also restrict calories with low-calorie foods like fibrous vegetables. Here are some fasting benefits. It promotes autophagy, which is when we break down weak or sick cells in our bodies. It helps control blood sugar. And it stimulates stem cells to repair our tissues. Fasting also increases insulin sensitivity, and it triggers mitophagy, which is where we get rid of sluggish mitochondria. We've actually created a comprehensive guide to fasting, which comes with the purchase of this series. It's well researched and referenced for you to use as a guide for better health. It's just one of the many additional resources that come with the purchase of this series. Please take a moment and pick which package is right for you and get it now. The free screening is almost over, and that means the 50% discount will be ending soon. Take advantage of this offer while it lasts. You deserve to feel better, and now's the time to do something for you. With more energy, you can be more present for your loved ones and be there for them. You need to be there for you first in order to do that. Take that step.
As you can see, how we eat, digest, and assimilate foods play a big role in how we experience energy levels.
Coupled with healthy detoxification and elimination, the body will produce ample energy when we treat it right.
We've learned a great deal about this already, but we're not done, not even close.
Food and toxins are a major part of the equation, but there's an old saying I love: still water breeds poison.
In the next episode, we get into movement or exercise, another critical piece of the equation. We've got to move. Life moves.
There's so many misconceptions about it that we've decided to make sure our experts covered it in depth for you.
We look forward to seeing you there for the next episode.
Until next time.